enabling technology that is the leading gamification and behavior management platform. So what does that mean? We power the engagement layers for these companies. And why is that valuable? Well, engagement hurts if your people are customers, obviously, with a proliferation of choices, right? People don't necessarily need to shop at your website or read your content. And from an internal standpoint, if your employees aren't using the software investments that you've made, whether those investments are CRM systems like Salesforce, intranets like SharePoint, learning management systems, then they're probably underperforming, and more importantly, you're not getting the value that you want to get out of your systems. And in fact, the data is showing that in fact, customers do not participate in things like loyalty programs, right? They don't participate actively in online communities. And internally, your employees aren't really making the best use out of the investments that you've made to help them do their jobs better. Now, it's funny, when we started, our customers were largely websites, blogs, content companies who really just wanted their captive readership to do more stuff, like comment more, just spend more time on the site. Since then, we've grown to do work for Samsung. We power their loyalty program. And we see the biggest growth in the enterprise space. We have CA Technologies, EMC, IBM, Deloitte, others who are using us in a combination of internal and external use cases. And so how do we do this? We do this through a number of engagement techniques, known as mechanics here, right? So traditional game mechanics, gamification, if you've heard that term, so things like points, levels, and badges. The second one is reputation mechanics, so elevating the expertise of somebody within a community. We actually power apps.com. And then last but not least, social mechanics. So helping brands kind of bring the same kinds of capabilities that make sites like Facebook and others so compelling, things like relevant notification streams, for example, connecting folks in the context of the behaviors that they're doing on a site versus some kind of arbitrary preference list. All of those things come together within again, a very robust but lightweight platform, which Jim is actually going to talk about and show. Again, it's not an app. It really is a platform, and it can integrate with any application, site, any node, any touch point on your digital ecosystem to provide a single system of status and reputation to motivate whatever behaviors you want. And the last thing I'll mention is in that evolution of our customer base, whereas we've started with maybe more explicit kind of behavior management or gamification, now we're seeing a lot of folks actually embedding our solution as their engine within their product more implicitly as part of their core platform. So I'll stop talking. I'll let Jim talk to the interesting stuff.
All right. So before I jump into a demo, I want to do a quick vocabulary set. When we talk about the platform, what we're really looking at is a way of organizing and segmenting players and teams, not users and groups. People performing actions are not necessarily the same as a user. The term is actually kind of important. But what we talk about is really the organization of a game or a marketing loyalty program or a combination of all these things as a set of players, actors, and reward programs and the behaviors that are sort of linking the both of those. The way that this works, any of these groupings can be, we do offer the multi-tenancy out to our enterprise customers for embedding into other SaaS platforms. But in a lot of cases, we're talking single network, single grouping of program. But really what you see is sort of a bubble up. People perform actions, and the actions are the event. At the core of our system, we're really just an event and rule engine. And then what happens out of the point where we receive this event is that a number of different things can happen. And this, from one side is that a behavior might have some sort of implicit points, positive, negative, zero value. It can be used for incentives, disincentives, or even just behavior tracking. Those points can bubble up into levels. Those points can act as a virtual currency for trading. Those points can act as karma, like Reddit karma or a discussion board. Those points, bubbling up into levels, really have to do with the very basest form of expertise. Your traditional points-based loyalty program of just member, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and so on. But one of the other ways that we like to look at this is really around the idea of any behavior, any reward. When we take the behaviors and we start to reward for the actual action itself rather than the points, you start to get out of this loyalty program, the sort of lightweight gamification that we see with points, badges, leaderboards. And you can start to get into some very rich experiences where you're rewarding specific actions. And you can structure those actions together so that you're complementing, on the enterprise side, the sort of experience with business process compliance, workflow, ERP. And you start to drive things around the idea of business process completeness, business process influence, where you're creating a way for people to understand what are they able to do to pull themselves a little bit longer, deeper into the resources that are available. And we can do those through a number of different structures. The rewards themselves. I've watched 10 videos. I've completed the activities needed for me to onboard. I've submitted my time card 5 times. Or we can structure these into larger ordered or unordered groups. Challenges, missions, quests, whatever you like to call them. And we have a couple different layers of those. And those can be really used in order to represent reputation. So how do we identify progressive tracks within a community? A community expert, what does that mean? Are there different ways that you can identify who has expertise for a given product, for a given product family? We're doing this with CA across 47 different product lines in their communities, and even tying that into their other aspects of their platform or of their customer engagement through conferences, through their CRM system. So you can get a much larger view of who are your most valued customers, how do they interact with you, and how do you have a mutually agreeable and mutually beneficial engagement between them. So that I personally don't really like the gamification term because it actually pulls away from that idea of the conversation or the interaction. We support other things around contests. Those same structures can be used for things like the rewarding based on rank, but we can also do things around layering on top of learning management. So this is learning and education is one of the areas that's very ripe for this sort of thing, where we can. There was a graph that went out the other day that I actually really loved that showed the engagement of just mental activity in a classroom is below sleep, is below chores, is above the most, some of the most mentally disengaging things. That classwork and classroom time and meetings especially are one of the worst things that happen. So learning and education are very, very good applications for this. We've started to see some incredible results around getting students engaged. We have some virtual universities that we're working with. We have a number of customers that are doing this around learning management certification, where we're actually seeing failure rates drop by double digits in some cases. We're seeing the grades or certification rates increase almost across the board. So there's some very exciting things there. Back to the mechanics, though, and the vocabulary. But all of these things really need to be surfaced back to the end user. All of the rewards programs are great, the points are great, but in order to have that real-time feedback, there are a number of different ways that we need to show this, and this is where we talk about those mechanics again. The mechanics are just the ways that we surface in combination those various recognition and reward components. That can be analytics, it can be notifications. Hey, you just did something great, do it again. Hey, somebody else did something great, do it again. Activity feeds, the ability to reinforce and socialize activity or content within a site. Even something as with Ask.com, for example, this is a great use case where they actually completely eliminated the idea of the rewards program and went entirely with a social experience. The social act of other people like me are things that will reinforce my own behavior and habitualize it. So whether the rewards are there, the points are there or not, that social aspect is a huge draw. And that's really what this is about, is trying to change behavior over time. Leaderboards. There are certain areas where rankings and competitions are very helpful. There are some where they're very harmful, but it's a very important component. When they're useful, they're incredibly powerful. And then finally, just sort of a general purpose toolbox of visualizations and various widgets and gears and portlets and frameworks, whatever you like to call them.
I think maybe one thing to add that may not come across.
Oh, sorry.
I think we lost the.
We did lose that for a second. We should be back up.
In the slide is that within this engine is a really robust way that our clients can define all of the rules and conditions for how they want to reward specific behaviors. So at the risk of oversimplifying, think of it really as input and output, right? You're sending our engine some kind of behavioral trigger. That could be, 1 or 2 lines of JavaScript tracking code on a website. It could be some kind of API call from a mobile app. It doesn't matter what it is. Send it to our engine, and what you can do is then configure and define all of the rules and conditions for what you want to do with that behavior once it comes in, including all of the metadata that defines those behaviors. And then the output can be things like, points, levels, badges, or activity feeds. Or some of the more innovative clients that we have are using these outbound signals from our API to deliver really, really hyper-contextual, personalized experiences based on the behavior that the person has done. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No problem. So just a really quick overview of the platform itself, where it's entirely business user driven. We don't try to make the technology something that gets in the way, but this is all something that should really result in a sort of a business user, a marketing type business analyst, depending on the program, to be able to use. Everything really comes down to the verb, that behavior itself. I'm just going to walk through the advanced configuration to show you some of the more interesting options to talk about. But the metadata structure behind things, taking in any flavor of data around, we really only care about the fact that we've completed a course. What are the sorts of things we might be interested in? Course ID, course topic, certification track that we're interested in. All of these things will help filter and sort of slice and dice the rewards program in such a way that the context lives through the behavior, through the reward, through the leaderboard, through the activity stream, so you can provide a lot of context back to the user. The sorts of things are important around creating a team experience or an individual experience, working with multiple point systems, virtual economies, reputation, and so on. One of the most important things to take into account is that whenever you have a game, or anything that resembles a game, people are going to try and figure out how to game the game. Sometimes you can handle these things in design. Can you create a way to cheat that actually benefits the community overall? In the cases that you can't, you want to try and limit these things. That can be limited by count, it can be limited by rate. But ultimately, it's providing that behavioral cue back out to the user around things like what's important, what are the verbs, what can I do, what actions can I take. It might be something as simple as reading or liking on Facebook. It might be something more complex like filling out a tax form. But all of those things get surfaced back out through the system. When we react to these, and again, that's sort of the purple boxes on the previous slide. This is really around the reward program, the levels, the achievements, the contests, and so on. I'm just going to jump into the advanced configuration because things get a little bit more interesting here. To show that what we're talking about here is really a fine degree of control over how we reward the behaviors. So the points sort of come along with things, but we want to be able to, after a collection of behaviors have taken place, is that something that's important at a team level or an individual level? Are there points that are associated with that? Are there ways that we can reward good behavior over a repeated period of time? Can I do this weekly? Can I do something daily? Am I going to sort of surface a little pip up to somebody's up to the screen to say, great, you just submitted your time card, wonderful, move on, what's next? And then create that sort of larger structure of, well, you've done your time card on time every day this week. Here's another reward. You do things every time over a month, over a quarter. Small ways to really sort of move people along. Control over scheduling, limitations on the number of rewards that are available per site. But ultimately what you're really looking at is defining the rule. Do you provide graphical rule building around sort of any or all logical rule setting on one player, a number of players who have performed a single behavior or any of a list of of behaviors. Closing an opportunity, completing a course, team comment, more than a certain number of times. Excuse me. I was going to sneeze there, I apologize. But also being sensitive to that behavioral metadata. What's the context of the behavior that came in? All of this is not something that needs to be predefined. This is very powerful, again, for business use or for an integration into a platform where the content itself might change, but the behaviors are going to be fairly common. So we have common integrations to things like Jive, to Salesforce, to others, where the behaviors themselves aren't going to change very much, but the characteristics of the behaviors, customer ID, page ID, community ID, all of those things are going to change, and they're going to be very customer specific. Being able to reward for one point or another is very important. I would like to show a couple just very brief fly-throughs of some of this in action. The screen size here is a bit infuriating. This is an example of, we talked about the reputation mechanics. What you'll see here up at the top is the header of Todd. He's a participant in this content site. We have a number of different ways to see where his rank and reputation lies. He's a level 4 health, but he's only in a level 2 living. So there's certain areas that we know that if we have a question for him, or if there's some way to engage with him, it might be a little bit more relevant to talk about the life section, the health section. If I drill into a particular piece of content, you'll see this around the discussions in the bottom. This is also important, especially around community, where we can provide that level of expertise, to show whose comments might be more relevant than others in a given context. The notification level. We see these behaviors coming in. I'm just trying to open up a reward. These are the things that help to provide that real-time feedback. Samsung is one that's really focused primarily around that individual reward and also the social aspect. So you'll see here things like, what are the things that I can do on the site? What are the things that are going to be that I'm going to be rewarded for? How do people rank within the site? And then finally, one of the fun ones recently that I've had the privilege to work on is actually a full game. One of our customers, Autodesk, has done this a couple times now, where they found out that a key part of why our platform even works is around helping to make something more obvious that an action can be taken, or to make it easier for somebody to take that action. They found that if people visit a complex application like AutoCAD a number of times throughout a trial period, the likelihood that they're going to buy the trial, the success of the trial period itself, goes up outrageously. I think the likelihood was something like 30–40%. So what they did was they created a game that actually draws you into using the platform itself. There's some things that you have to do that are related to learning on the site, reading documentation, taking a tutorial, but there are others where you actually have to go in and find the results from sample files. In this case, this is just a game around sort of the apocalypse trigger. It feels a bit like an Indiana Jones, but the idea is that you're going in and finding characteristics of designs, pulling them back, getting the expertise, so that at the end of the trial period you're much more likely to buy because you feel that you know the application better. It's more valuable to you. So those are a couple examples of how this works. And we have a couple last slides here on some of the aggregate the aggregate results that we see on some key business objectives. But I think it'd be good probably to open up to questions, even though we've only got a couple minutes left.
And maybe just to close, to kind of chime in on the point about Autodesk, all of these folks, they weren't trying to build games, right? They weren't thinking about anything other than some kind of metric that they wanted to move. Now, in the case of Autodesk, it was very specifically, how do we get people who visit the website to buy more of our stuff, right? And so what we do, and these are some of the folks that we work with, is we try to understand how can we move the needle for you in some way? Who are the people that we're talking about? Are they prospects? Are they customers? Are they employees? Are they students? And what are the systems that those folks use? Are those websites, mobile applications, or are they, Salesforce or SharePoint? And we work backwards from that sort of objective, help them kind of drill down and identify the behaviors the specific verbs within those systems that we need to help them motivate so that they get to that end goal. Do we have any time for questions? Yeah. Okay. Yes?
How much of what you do is just a pure technology sale versus heavily consultative engagement? Because a lot of those companies haven't thought through game dynamics.
That's a great question. We are a platform as a service. We are a software as a service, so we're a technology company. That said, we have built a team of experts that we call producers, and those are the folks who are who help our clients in the implementation phase, right? Strategic and technical consulting. And the folks that we have on the team come from some pretty interesting backgrounds. They come from Zynga, Playdom, EA, game design backgrounds. But we also have folks from American Express, so traditional loyalty backgrounds. We have one in the room today, Zach Bodner, who's a producer on our team here in New York. He's got a cognitive sciences background. So for us, it's really all about marrying the psychology of motivation with the practice of design and enabling it through some really cool technology. Any other questions?
How you, Bunchball talks a lot the same way. Do you see them as a direct competitor, or do you do something different?
Yeah, I mean, they've been in the market a little bit longer. They started out as a designer of Flash games. I think our approach has always been, less about games and gamification and more about behavior management. And so the way that's sort of been borne out is we are the only sort of provider in the marketplace that can support this true platform deployment. Where we have enterprises who have, say, you've got your, APAC division, and you've got HR and sales enablement, and you've got, multiple parts within the organization that has to have, different deployments for their own systems. Same thing with content companies who have, multiple different blogs as part of their network. We see this again as very stripped down to the behaviors themselves and how we manage those versus can we create a game. So there's certainly a lot of attention around this gamification concept and a lot of smaller players trying to help companies build games. I think our vision is much more broad than that.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, we tend to focus a lot more on call a 360 view of a customer, a 360 view of an audience member, or a total picture of an employee. We don't want to gamify, or we don't want to layer our platform on top of LMS. We want to do LMS, we want to do profile management, we want to do CRM, we want to do sales enablement, so that we get a full picture of what that employee is doing relative to any given customer, so that you can see that, yes, this person is doing very, very well, except in the consulting engagement aspect of their job. That's one area where they might need improvement, or they're killing it in direct customer service on help desk. So the point application versus a broader scale, large scope view of what an audience member would be or what a player would be is very important to our methodology and to our platform.
So one more question over here.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
I was going to ask, what's your average sale value, and where did you spend the $40 million on?
Well, we haven't spent it yet. We still have a little bit of it. So we can certainly talk offline about sales. I mean, we're a SaaS platform, and so our structure for contracts is pretty typical of SaaS platforms. We do kind of 12 or 24 or 36-month auto-renewing contracts, and that's really based on kind of the size of your community and the scope of your digital touch points. We are in continually aggressive growth phase, right? So I opened up the New York office by myself in a little office in Dumbo, and now we've got an office in Soho with 12 very, very smart people, and we're probably going to double that in the next 6 months. We've just made an announcement, I think last week, about adding to our executive team folks from Oracle and some other